motion to waive the previous minutes, and
I second.
okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can consider the meeting minutes from 6/21/23 part of the official record. This evening, we get to have, we have to have the parks. Marissa, Director of Fishers Parks, yay, come up and give us a good debrief on Fishers Parks.
There we go. Can you hear me? I'm pretty loud normally anyway. Thank you guys for letting me come talk to you tonight. Just a couple quick updates from the Parks Department. We wrapped our first season at Geist Waterfront Park. And just kind of wanted to share some fun success stories from this facility and then one of our recent events as well. So as you can see here, this is the first adult changing table that we've installed in one of our facilities. Very exciting. As one of the amenities, we are looking to put it in a restroom building that we're building at our agri park currently. And then as we build and as we grow. Another really cool feature is this wheelchair accessible beach mat that we have that goes in this picture. It doesn't really show it. There's an additional piece that connects all the way down to the water. I wish we had photos of all of the stuff. I don't have pictures of everything, but I know for sure that at least 2 people that were using wheelchairs made it into the water by use of this mat. And such a cool thing. One was able to transfer out of their wheelchair and get into the water, and one stayed in their wheelchair but was able to access on the sand. Pretty cool thing. In late June, we had 8 seniors that on their bucket list was to go kayaking. They had never gone kayaking before. The woman down it's my right, I think, is climbing in. She's 99 years old.
Oh, wow.
Had never been kayaking, was approached by someone at that facility and said, hey, is there anything that you can do for this group that has never been kayaking before? And we said, absolutely, we will. We worked with our vendor there, Wheel Fun Rentals. That's Mark that you can see in the red hat that's assisting to help them in, and they were able to kayak. So what you can see in the picture there is an accessible kayak launch where you can set the kayak in that kind of cradled area, and then the divots that you see, you can actually use the paddle, put it in the divot, and then pull yourself, if you're able, forward until you launch into the water. So it keeps it very stable as you're getting in. As if anyone's kayaked here, it's not always stable. And so it was really cool to see them go out on the water. They went all the way out into Geist and cruised around. Such a fun thing to see there. And then I thought I would share this too. So this was from Fuse, and they shared this on their Facebook page, kind of pictures of Geist Waterfront Park. And it says the beach, but make it more accessible. This is the cool stuff that I love to see, because we do this as a parks department and as a city because we think it is really important. And then when we're recognized by others, that is like the cool story, I think. And when we see people use it. So they kind of bragged on us about our accessibility at Geist Waterfront Park. Pretty cool. And then I wanted to touch on, we just had Glow in the Park, which is a huge event, probably one of our biggest events outside of Spark Fishers. It is about 4,000 people. There are DJs on stage. There's lots of black lights. We shoot glow-in-the-dark paint into the audience. Lots of music, lots of dancing, lots of sensory stimuli. And one of the things that we learned with this event was through COVID. And so we brought it back kind of as we were easing out of COVID. Not everybody felt comfortable to be packed into a crowd and be sweating up against the barricade right next to the next person. So we created this socially distanced area in the back. And so you could socially distance with your family or your friends or whoever you felt comfortable with. And you'd have that same experience. It wasn't quite as loud because you're back away from the stage. not quite as much paint in your face and in your mouth, and you were away from other people. And what we took from that is this didn't only work for COVID. This worked for a lot of different challenges that somebody might have with sensory overload. So we kept that. And so now we have a sensory-friendly spray area. We did that for the first time outside of COVID last year, and then carried it on this year. The new thing that we had is last year we recognized that this event draws a large crowd from our deaf community. There's a lot of bass. You can feel it when you walk in. It just kind of makes your whole body rumble. And then, of course, there's a lot of other things going on. And so we added ASL interpreters for this event. And it was really cool. We partnered with 317 Dance Academy, and they were interacting with the interpreters the entire time and made it a really engaging experience. The other thing that I was very excited about was an ADA paint spray area. So you can see it in light before we started, and then once the event started, kind of when it's dark and one person is using that area. So if you've been to the amphitheater, there are two ADA accessible concrete pads that are kind of near the back of the path, the main pathway, but it's far back. And as I was talking about this event, everybody's kind of crushed up to that stage. So if you're in the back and you're not able to walk on the grass or move onto the grass, then you are really set back from the event. So what we did was we moved the catwalk almost all the way out to this platform, and then we raised this platform up so that if you were on this platform, you were as close as some of the others at this event. Again, I love to share these success stories. This made me cry. Hopefully I don't cry right now. But this was a really cool success story. This woman shared how it started, how it ended. She shares that she has MS and that she was able to attend this event with her son. The thing that I always talk about with my staff is if you build it, they will come. She throws that in there at the end because she says, I only saw one other wheelie friend, but as the movie goes, if you build it, he will come. When we started with the amphitheater and we had those concrete platforms, staff was putting tents up there because, it's a great spot to put up a tent or to put a vendor. And I said, that is not the intended use here, and we're not going to do that. And I got a little bit of questioning on why we needed to because nobody used them. And I said, that's okay if nobody uses them. We're going to continue to leave this open and accessible, and they will be used. And I always remember the first time, it took a couple weeks, but the first time we saw people actually using them that needed to use them. And so I've used that before. If we build it, they will come. And it was really, really cool for me to see this and know that people were able to enjoy this event in a different way. Those are my big updates from Parks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So before I even saw the Facebook post, one of the first things I thought was, we need to get some beach wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Is that in the works?
It's definitely in the works, yeah. We're looking what we can do with the rest of the bond that we have. Some of the buildings that we planned on building are not going to happen, but that does leave money for other things, and that is definitely one of the things on the list.
Yeah, they're really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they are. Yeah.
The other question, and I should feel really dumb right now because I don't see those posts on Facebook, So how can we help? Because listen, I've been around long enough with this group that there have been times there were people who there's such a thing as an adult changing table. I mean, the amount of ground that we've covered in just awareness as a city is so exciting. I'm just beaming from ear to ear. It's very exciting. But how can we help some of these elder communities and folks who really, they don't leave their community because they don't know there's any place like that they can go?
Right.
I mean, how can we think about reaching out to people that we know would really enjoy things. I didn't know we had accessible kayak launches. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, really?
Those little
Okay.
cables, and
Yeah,
you're like, how
yeah.
cool is that?
Yeah.
And if I had a
Yeah.
grandma that wanted to go kayaking, I'd be like getting her there as fast as I could.
Right. Yeah.
Is there an outreach beyond social media and the print media that we're really reaching out to specific communities? Isn't there a way that we can brainstorm to help with that?
Yes, I think that's probably where we fall short. I do think we do a lot of good things, but we're pretty limited in the reach. And so I would ask you guys how you would want to receive all of that information, and if you can push it out, I would love that.
I think one suggestion I have, and I'll speak at the very end about March Disability Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And some of the things we are going to do, because we've got the community center and what it's going to bring.
Yeah.
We also have the new Fishers Event Center,
Mhm.
and one of the key focuses and a key partner, I'll talk to that later as well. I think taking the month of March, people pay attention to us a little bit more then, start it then, but have those little snippets
Yeah.
of those messages that we can continue to place in social media and send out, and but build it and launch it in March is my suggestion.
Okay. But like month to month, I think about too, there's things that we do specific to events. And like Spark, we had a specific accessibility page. We don't do that for all our events. They're not quite as big. But there are things that we do for events. And then there are things that we do all the time, like Geist Waterfront Park. So is there a way that we can reach this group? Or I guess what's the best way to get all of that information to this group? Because I do think that would be a good, and maybe it's sending it to Ross. I don't know.
I think if it went to the committee,
Yeah.
they could share it with us, and a lot of us have mailing lists where we could reach people.
Okay.
Where we could send it out
Okay.
through either social media or email, and we could share it with those in our contact area. We could share.
Yeah.
I think about, I gave feedback on an event, maybe it was Park Fishers, I'm not positive, but it was a concert.
It was. Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Because of parking.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know about where to park,
Mhm.
and I saw somebody use the wrong map in another publication, and I brought it forward. So
Yes.
I think every time you put out a lot of good information after that. After
Yeah.
It was like, oh, and aha, that's the wrong map. We do have accommodations, and so that comes with all of these, of the key events we have throughout the year.
Yeah.
And there are websites, and there's emails, and there's, I get something daily.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of push out there
Yeah.
for us in places that the city uses. So.
Well, and I really appreciated that you reached out, and I appreciated that because I didn't know that map had gotten out. I don't even know
Right.
where it came from.
And it happens.
But I appreciate that feedback and that direct line to the Parks Department so that we know what we're missing too. There are things that we don't always think about, and something as simple as like that parking is a big thing. We did make a move actually after Spark Fishers to move every event that we do. We have accessible parking in the South CSB lot, so it's that lot between City Services and City Hall. Half of it's under construction, but half of it, we use that for accessible parking for all of our events now, which is so much better than like the police garage or other areas that we were using. I mean, it's truly accessible.
Well, I think the other thing you'll find, and I was going to talk about the beach wheelchairs, and I would like to try a kayak. That would be something for me. I grew
Yeah.
up on the water. I
Yeah.
haven't been back on it. So I think this group is really keen on people that are, come to these presentations and elsewhere. Let us try it.
Yeah.
Say, Stacy, I'm going to pick up the phone, find 10 of your friends who are also, mobility challenged. Let's try this wheelchair. Let's try these things. and
Yeah.
Let's make sure they work. Cecilia met with somebody about the Indy Fuels, facilities and the, benches that people would sit on, and how are people with wheelchairs going to be.
Mhm.
She asked the questions, and when we're building this in, and especially with the Parks Department, you're going to get more feedback. You're
Yeah.
going to get more of those posts that you have.
Yeah.
Because that's how we work.
Yeah.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa.
Good to see you.
Next, we have another guest speaker, Sherry, from the Brain Center.
Hey.
share your goodness with us.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this to work. Okay. All right, well, thank you guys for allowing me to come and speak. So my name is Sherry Waugh. Some of you have met my husband, Brad Waugh. So when we got married at 6 weeks, he had a massive stroke, which spent 74 days in the hospital, pretty much flipped our world kind of upside down. And kind of ironically, I have worked with stroke and brain injury clients for longer than I've known him. But I'm here today to kind of talk about what I do. I worked for Community Health Network for about 16 and a half years, but have since now transitioned to the Brain Center, which is, there's 3 different locations right now. There is one in McCordsville, there is one in kind of by Community North Hospital, and then one in Fishers off of like 96 and Hague. Was started by a neuropsychologist. They staff marriage counseling, children's psychologist, and I was able to kind of transition into running and starting a driving rehab facility. So I'm going to kind of talk about what I do. So most of the time when I tell people I'm an occupational therapist, they look at me like I have kind of 2 heads and they don't really know what that is. But I work with people of all ages to increase independence, maintain their independence, most specifically for me, of making sure it's safe for them to continue driving. So we can work in a variety of settings: outpatient clinics, inpatient skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, schools, mental health settings, so lots of different environments. My role is to, meet with each person individually to see what level of independence that they want to be able to do. Also, I'm occasionally having the conversation where it's time to stop driving. So then exploring what are alternate options that people can do in order to still maintain their independence in their community. So I am, big fancy name, a certified driving rehab specialist. So I went through additional training. I had to have 1,400 hours of experience in order to be certified. And that includes pretty much knowing everything about every medical diagnosis and what can lead to potentially safety concerns behind the wheel. So again, I'm working with people of all ages, of every pretty much medical diagnosis, and I'll go over more of that kind of later here in the slide. My main roles, so first off, you got to make sure each person meets the state requirements. Well, the state of Indiana has very minimal requirements for people to get their license. They just basically have to pass a vision test, and if they can kind of finagle their way through that vision test, then they will give them their license. They're not assessing, does that person even know their address? Do they know basic kind of information that could be a sign of memory changes? Again, understand what's the role of driving for each person. So, I'll get someone who's maybe had a stroke and they're like, I want to get back to doing the driving that I did before, and that included driving down to Florida. That includes potentially driving at night, and I need to get back to doing that. To also, I see a lot of the aging population where they I don't want to go on the interstate anymore. I don't drive at night. I just need to be able to manage my short errands around my community. So what I do, and I'll go a little more into depth, so I do an in-clinic evaluation, which looks at overall skills that we need in order to safely manage driving. If appropriate, then I proceed to an on-the-road evaluation, and then I'm providing kind of final recommendation and follow-up services as needed. So who can I work with? Pretty much anyone, and I think I've seen all of these medical diagnoses. A big one more over the last couple of years has been the Alzheimer's dementia population. Those younger ones with autism, folks with ADHD, amputations. I've done a lot with these folks, predominantly lower extremity amputations, brain injury, cerebral palsy, diabetes, which usually leads to some neuropathy, so looking at sensation more, MS, Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injuries, and of course stroke. So pretty much every medical diagnosis, and I've worked with all of these folks. So warning signs that I kind of tell people, people call, well, I'm concerned that someone maybe isn't safe to drive. So what are we kind of looking for? Are they missing traffic signs? So sometimes there's secret hidden kind of stop signs, whether it's been covered by trees and stuff, of is that person, missing those signs? Are they driving at inappropriate speeds? Sometimes I'll see people where, oh, I just drive slower now. Well, that can be a red flag, because that might mean that their brain is just moving slower and they can't keep up with the pace of driving. Difficulty maintaining lane position. So are they drifting while they're driving? Are they getting lost, particularly in their familiar areas? Are they having near misses, whether with curbs or other vehicles? Poor judgment. So especially now, common with the left flashing arrows, making left-hand turns at those. That's a big judgment processing, multitasking kind of skill that people have to make that right decision. So if they're struggling some with those, if they're hovering on the brake, if scrapes or dents are being identified, they're processing, so is that delayed in responding, and difficulty parking. So the process that I take folks through, so anyone who sees me, they have to have an active learner's permit or operator's license. Sometimes people will come to me and they've already been reported to the state. Depending on a time frame, their license may have already been invalidated. So I am able to communicate with the BMV Medical Review Board to get their license open to do the evaluation. I need to get a doctor's order that states a need for that particular driving evaluation. So kind of what is their medical diagnosis that's potentially putting them at risk behind the wheel. So the in-clinic evaluation takes about an hour and a half. This is where they're coming into the office, and I'm isolating every single skill. For the folks that have been driving that come to me, I say this isn't a question of do you know how to drive? Do you know the rules of the road? This is looking at how is your vision? How is your processing? How are those skills that you have to rely on each time you're behind the wheel? So in addition to basic, making sure they're meeting the state requirements with clearness, I'm also looking more at depth perception, their peripheral fields, their visual scanning. I'm then also looking at their general cognitive skills. So this is a big one of their short-term memory, their divided attention, their processing speed, decision making. I do some basic kind of driving rules and road sign kind of assessments. Also physical. So how is their reaction time? How is their, ability to coordinate their movements? Do they use an assistive device that they would have to get in and out of their vehicle? So, I had one gentleman who came and he was in a scooter, and I said, okay, well, what are we going to do with your scooter if you get back to driving? Oh, I didn't even think of that. So, coordinating everything that kind of goes with that person. And then also looking at just their general emotional response. So do they get very frustrated? We're seeing more road rage kind of now. Is that going to uptick for them? Are they aware of their difficulties? So are they being attentive that they're maybe having memory changes or processing changes that could impact? And also just, are they able to sustain that focus for, the duration of doing the test? So after the in-clinic, they have to demonstrate overall, kind of within, somewhat of a normal, not normal range, but the appropriate skills for me to actually then get in the car with them. So I then am taking them out on the road. I do have a vehicle that's equipped with an emergency brake and gas pedal on my side. And usually I'm keeping them out for about an hour. First, just looking at, are they able to kind of set up the vehicle, get their seat adjusted, get their mirrors adjusted, and then how is their driving? So I'm watching for, are they making complete stops at stop signs and traffic lights? Are they using their signal, turning into the correct lane? Are they attentive to their speed limits? Are they watching for school zones? So general driving rules that we all should be doing, are they safely recognizing those? Also watching their reactions with other drivers. I had this young guy in his teens that he came once and he would just get mad at every single person when they did something wrong. And I said, this isn't going to work if you want to be a driver, because you're going to see this all the time. So we need to work through that. And then I make recommendations. So someone comes, they go through the full evaluation. Maybe they have some kind of mild changes, whether it's from a stroke or a brain injury. But hey, you're ready to be back driving. They get their clearance from a medical standpoint. Sometimes I'm saying, okay, you're good to drive, but we might need to make some modifications in your driving. So starting to talk about avoiding, more of the complex environments. So avoiding the interstate, driving only during the day, maybe kind of keeping your drives to short distances so you're kind of within your fatigue level. Sometimes people will come and they maybe haven't driven for a couple of years after their stroke. So things have changed out on the road. So I'm doing maybe potentially lessons with them to see, okay, let's see if we can get you to a range where you can be considered safe to do the driving you want to do. Sometimes folks come a little too early for a driving evaluation. So I may recommend that they go through additional, speech therapy, physical therapy to work on some of those skills, and then I can retest them later. And then I would say almost daily, I'm having to recommend that it's time for someone to stop driving. So having that conversation is a little bit of a different way kind of for families. It's a hard conversation for people to have. So I'm kind of that outside person of, let's have this conversation because it is time to stop. Like I said, with some of the diagnoses I work with, so particularly spinal cord injuries, MS, amputations, I do have vehicle modifications that I can do training with. So these are kind of two different styles of hand controls. They're very easy to use once you figure out how to work them. So they pretty much just sit right under the steering column, and all your gas and your brake is controlled with either your left or your right. You can do either side depending on what would be the best for each client. You'll then notice there's kind of a knob on the steering wheel. Since you're taking away one of their hands to do the steering, you want to put a knob there to help them kind of manage turns and curves a little bit easier. So these are a lot of folks where I'm kind of transitioning them and training them, where if they still want to drive, I had a lady with Parkinson's recently, and she's like, my legs, I can't rely on them, but I still want to be able to drive. So we transitioned her over to hand controls. I think it's stuck.
Here it comes.
Where are we here? Well,
Could we just go to 10?
we
Can
can
we go
try,
out?
yeah, let's see if we go. From there.
Okay.
Give it a go.
Okay. All right. A different modification is a left foot accelerator. So I'll see folks who have potentially had a right-sided amputation, and we're basically transitioning the gas pedal to the left of the brake. So they're operating it the opposite direction. I'll see a lot of people who are like, well, I'll just cross over and I'll just still manage how the pedals are there. Well, that might be okay for a little while, but eventually that's not the way your body is used to moving. So it's going to potentially lead to breakdown, especially in the hip and that type of stuff. I also tell people, they'll come and say, well, can I just drive with my prosthetic? You don't have the sensation. You're not aware of potentially where that limb is with the prosthetic, so it's safer to potentially transition to something else. And then the different steering devices, again, so depending on what's easier for each person, they have all different kind of steering options as well. Again, I said, like, I have to potentially go over alternate transportation options. So there's links here. I had a student a couple years ago that actually went through the entire state of Indiana and every county and generated a document of all the transportation alternate options within each county for the state. There was a couple that she also tried some of these. So I think I saw on your guys' website that you have the Go-Go Grandparents. She actually used that to see if it was, people could use that to manage their daily things. It also has, different diagnoses, facts. People can take a driving recourse through AAA, and then also how to find a driving specialist. Of course, the Go-Go Grandparents. So if you're not familiar with it, it's basically kind of the middle person between Uber and Lyft. So a lot of people may not know how to use their smartphone to set up the app for Uber and Lyft. So this allows them to just kind of have everything set up. They call a number, they set up the transportation, so they don't have to worry about doing any of that. Rides in Sight is another website where someone can go in and they can enter their zip code, and it will pull up all the alternate transportation options within their area. Socoa, they do have their main group is within Marion County. Also, they do have now called My Freedom, where they're alternating and giving out to the surrounding counties next to Marion County. And then Hamilton County has the Prime Life Enrichment, where they do kind of door-to-door transportation for Hamilton County residents who are 50 and older. All right, and these are sometimes the people who I work with. So any questions or anything?
So how do people get referred to you?
So sometimes usually it comes from a physician. So there's a lot of aging groups now within the hospital systems. So it's a lot of educating, especially now that I've transitioned to a different location. I went 1 week to 32 different locations just to drop off and say, hey, I'm still here, I'm just at a different location. The BMV, if someone gets reported, they require them to go through a comprehensive driving evaluation, so they have a list of where people can go. I've also educated assisted living facilities. I've reached out to different autism organizations. So it's kind of me, educating about, because a lot of people don't know until they either have to go through the evaluation or they have a family member who does.
And is it covered by insurance?
It is not. So when I worked for Community, we were billing insurance. However, compliance was checking that and they were not being reimbursed. Medical insurance, unfortunately, says it's not medically necessary. So there is an out-of-pocket charge, and that's consistent throughout the whole state with those of us who do this job.
How many people like you are there?
So within Indianapolis, there are 3, myself included.
What about somebody who has a child with ADHD?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had 2 that are now adults that were a little bit scared to drive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if I'm a parent sitting out there going, I don't know if I should have my child drive. They have ADHD and they're scared to drive when
Yeah.
they get on the road. Is that somebody you would say, let's say at that high school level,
Mm-hmm.
to contact your organization and have an evaluation done?
Yes, yeah. So we're starting to see more. A lot of the younger ones that I've worked with is parents expressing concerns of my child is a high functioning autism and I don't know if they're safe to drive. And typically I'm seeing folks with autism, you want them to be at a range where they're ready to do it. That's what I'm finding with teenagers is sometimes parents are like, okay, we just need you to drive because we're tired of taking you places. Well, if they're not ready, they're a safety risk. I had 2 folks with autism that I worked with. One wanted it, and he literally, the first time I saw him, was pacing in our lobby, didn't want to do it. By the time him and I were done, he was driving on the interstate. He was driving himself to and from work. And I had the other guy who would just get mad at everything. And I was like, do you want to do this? And he was like, no, my mom wants me to do it. And I'm like, then we're done. But I have a young girl that's going to be coming to me, and she's got some hand-eye coordination, and parents are like, we don't know if she can drive. So I'm going to take her through all the in-clinic assessment and kind of see where are her skills. She's also participating in therapy right now, so I said, well, they can kind of work on some of those skills to see if we can get them. Those are then the ones where I'm basically doing kind of like driver's ed training out on the road to help them kind of manage that. I've had a couple who have been in motor vehicle accidents that had significant anxiety and fear of getting back behind the wheel. And so we started, very simple. And by the time we were done, if their accident had happened around here, we drove past that site so that they, could manage what they wanted.
About what would a parent estimate to have these special driving lessons?
The cost?
Yes.
So for driving lessons, for one lesson, it's $150, but if we have like a 5-pack and we have a 10-pack, if you buy more, then the price goes down.
I see.
So typically, I had one I just worked with autism, and they did a 5 kind of lessons just to kind of see how do we communicate with her, because they were like, Mom was like, well, I told her that we're going to go straight through the roundabout. Well, she went straight through the roundabout.
No.
So she said, I don't know how to communicate with her to make sure she's doing it right. So I said, this is how I'm working with her. And so we just kind of did enough to get her to a point where, okay, Mom and Dad felt better to kind of take over from there.
These are all good things. I think we've got kids at schools, both Fishers and HSC.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of the schools, I know they're like a 16-week waiting period for general driver's ed. So eventually, if I could, grow and expand, that would be something that I would like to offer as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Wow.
No? That's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we are to number 4 on our agenda, which will be committee updates. And Wilbur, we'll talk about housing first.
I don't have a lot. I have a little bit. I learned this week, one of our neighbor cities, Westfield, Bill and Jen Quick are putting together Villa Licci, L-I-C-C-I, and it's a community for traumatic brain injury survivors. And they already own the land. They're in the process of building it, and I just think that's pretty exciting that that's recognized, and I'll pass that information on to you. But the other thing, I don't know if everybody remembers, a few years ago, we were working with Real America, and they did phase 1 in Ritchie Reserve, and they said phase 2 would be coming along one of these days. Well, phase 2 is in site design, and it's 65 additional units. It'll look like the other Ritchie Reserve that's already existing there off of 106th and between I-69 and Hegg. But it's senior apartments, and they're attainable apartments. That means that they'll be in the 70-80% of annual median income, AMI. So they'll make it a little more affordable for people to live there. They've also said their phase 1 was just market rate, but they put together all these programs for the seniors, and they said they've been thriving with all these programs. The property manager is doing a great job with activities, and that also will be carried forward with phase 2 with the new 65-unit apartment. I just think that's pretty exciting that that's finally happening.
Wilbur, will that be on the same land?
It'll be at the same location. If I remember right, when they first presented, there's a creek.
Right.
Ross
Yes.
probably knows.
Yeah.
It's gone through
Yep.
planning commission, but I think it was one was on one side of the creek and the other was on the other side of the creek.
Correct. It'll be just south of it. This is all still north of the Hamilton County Animal Shelter. So, but
We're
the
so
twin
happy to have the
building-
director of planning here.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations,
by the way.
Ross.
Yes.
I'm only happy if he continues to do the ADA part, which he is, so we're
Yeah.
happy about his
Not going
promotion.
anywhere.
That's all I have.
That's awesome. The only other thing I would add, just for those of you who have been following other Hamilton County projects, North End in Carmel, which was an old town, was the developer, and the partner in that was Villages of Marici, is officially open. They already have a waiting list, just like anybody else, but it is a mixed-use development, very walkable, and people are moving in there and just loving it. So they have 25% of their units were set aside for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they are opening over phases of time. So if you hear about North End, it's happening, it's there, it's beautiful.
We have a student moving in there in October.
Well, people are so excited. So it's great. Employment, Chrissy Pogue and Michelle Stelz.
So I brought some flyers with QR code and everything from an upcoming event from Knowledge Service. Kira Critchlow, who's been very active in some of our meetings as far as the networking group and others have put this on. It's going to be held at Knowledge Services Headquarters.
Sorry. Knowledge Service Headquarters. It's going to be like speed dating, but an interview. So it's just people are going to be going around trying to connect employers with employees and hopefully get some connections there. They're working with VR and hire-ons as well. So I brought flyers if anybody wants to take them. There's a QR code to get directly on board with it. That's October 26th from 3 to 6, again at Knowledge Service Headquarters on Cross Point Boulevard.
And they're seeking employers and potential
Correct.
employees. So
Mhm.
at this
Correct.
point, we're still about a month out. We have plenty of time. If you know an employer or if you are an employer and you want to get connected, we are super excited to have you at that event.
And segue to that, the Reverse Job Fair is going to be held October 6th at Grace Fishers off Oleo Road. We're going to be doing kind of a breakfast model. Last year we did a lunch model, so we're trying to kind of alternate it to hit businesses at different points or whatever. So we're still looking for employers and employees. That information is on the Fishers website. Thank you, Fishers and team. Real super easy Google link to, or Google Doc just to tap on there and go ahead and fill out. It's going to start at 8:45. Just kind of do a little light breakfast, a little, disability or disability 101. Not necessarily to convince people to hire individuals with disabilities because they're already there, right? We're going to talk to them about why somebody's not going to maintain eye contact with you possibly, but it doesn't mean they're not listening, or what an accommodation might look like, or disclosing a disability or not disclosing a disability. So again, that information's all on the website. We had another great networking meeting last week, 2 weeks ago. They're all blending together. I just know fall break is really soon. But it was really good. It's always good to have engaging conversation. Mike Thibodeau and Jill Doyle from Invest Hamilton County were there, and they're just always a wealth of knowledge and information, and very supportive of the initiative that we're doing and coming to both of us with all kinds of ideas that just continue to blow our mind. So,
and some things moving forward for as we'll get closer to next March and stuff, to partnerships with the Pursuit Institute and Chamber of Commerce's and that type of thing, and looking at some more of this on a global kind of county basis, with some opportunities for some pilot projects and that type of thing, for some training cohorts and that type of thing. So more to come as that starts to become available.
Very cool. Sort of an employment-related segue to community supports. For the first time ever in the history of ever for the state of Indiana, the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services had an all-staff annual conference. That they planned to make an annual conference last week, and I was a speaker at their event and told the story, but I'm specifically doing this because you're here, Marissa, and you love to hear feel-good stories. I was at the Kroger on 116th Street, and there was a young man who had his Kroger outfit on, and I've been doing this a long time, so I could probably pretty accurately guess that he might have been on the autism spectrum. I think he decided that he was going to have a little break right in the middle of his shift, and sat down on the floor, because he was ripping up some paper, and if putting it in his trash bag, I think he was supposed to just be putting the trash bag somewhere else. And so I was just kind of observing how it played out. But the coolest thing was another employee from Kroger came and sat with him and started talking with him, and then a customer came and sat with him. And I was like, you know how far we've come, because that would have not happened 10 years ago in most Krogers across the state, let alone in Fishers. And I just appreciate everybody's investment in making this a city. I feel like I'm Scott Fadness right now. Making this a city that is really livable and lovable and just fantastic for all people, not just certain people. So that was a fun story. The other thing I just wanted to share, if anybody is watching this recording or you're in this room and you're part of the service delivery system, the most exciting news today, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services officially approved the state's proposal to increase our rates and pay providers retroactively to July 1st. And so if you're watching this and you want to know when that's going to be, you're going to get more information mid-October. You should continue to bill the new rates, which they have asked people to do since July. But that is really, really big news. The other thing just specifically here about Fishers, as you know, Outside the Box tried for years to make something happen, and then we had to fight a pandemic. And so They had their ribbon cutting towards the end of July, but officially opened July 10th in Fishers. We are currently already serving 48 individuals there, and we already have almost 40 additional people on the waiting list. And so that is pretty remarkable and really expresses the need that we have for people who want to be in their town and not necessarily get up and have to go somewhere else for services after high school. So appreciate this group's support on making that a reality, and we're very excited. We have our big fundraiser for Outside the Box is a week from Friday at the Montage. It's called Inside the Bottle for Outside the Box. Food and wine, good times. So if you're interested, I can get you more information on that. That's all I got for community sports. Darcy, networking and social
Yes.
opportunities.
Can I ask one question for
Yes,
you?
ma'am.
What is the new rate? It's an hourly rate, right? It was like $10 or something. What is it gone?
Depends on the
So it
service.
depends on the service. We had services, the lowest amount was for behavior management. They got a 2% increase.
Okay.
And day services is probably the highest, right up there with music therapy, who got around a 30% increase. Residential services, where nationally there is a gargantuan direct service worker crisis, got a pretty hefty bounce. And I think the good news for people in our community is that for providers who haven't already pulled the trigger and increased rates, we will begin to see the payment for workers going up, and will be a little bit more competitive in Hamilton County. So I know we really have not had a difficult challenge getting staff interested in working for Outside the Box, which is one service provider. I don't know if you guys have a lot of Fisher services outside of music therapy.
Yeah.
I will tell you that one of our award winners at the March Disability Awareness approached Outside the Box and said, I want to continue to do this work, and I want to work at Outside the Box, and is one of our facilitators now. So Xanthi's there, and that's going super well. So she's working with people that she worked with all through school, and it's cool to see a community that supports that excitement and is able to communicate that amongst the city. Are there any other questions?
Thanks.
Okay, Darcy, now you.
All right, great. I have a few updates. I shared in an email the calendar of events for each month, like the various awareness months, the various disability months. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to share that information, maybe a story of someone you know who has that particular injury or disability, to get some more awareness out there about that particular injury or disability. So that I'm still working on what that's going to look like, whether we just contact somebody and say, hey, do you know someone who's got a story who would like to share to give awareness to this particular disability. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to look like yet, but that is the intent of the calendar. So if you see anything on there that I missed, please let me know. The second update I'd like to talk about is the window cling for being an ally for business. So like on Kay's laptop, there is I'm an ally. And with the multicolored person, like with the logo, that's, I think, what we're going to try to look for on a 4x4 window cling. And I wasn't sure, like, funding wise, can the Fishers Advisory Committee, do we fund that?
Do we have a cost yet of how much it would be?
We do. I do have, for somebody at the Wise Cup gave me a breakdown of how much a 4x4 window cling would be in size for like 50, 100, 500, and so forth. So I have the breakdown. So it's now just designing it and then getting it printed. And then with this window cling, what is being a business ally going to look like? Like, do they have to have employee training? Do they have, what would allow them to put this window cling up and a person know that they are an ally? So that I need the background on how to formulate that.
So one thing we talked about at our business networking group, and Cecilia asked that I bring it up today, is that we had some feedback from self advocates who maybe didn't want it to basically disclose that there were people with disabilities working there. So maybe it was more of a business kit in if you have a customer, if you have an employee, that type of thing. So not just an employer of people with disabilities, but how do you become, you know, a member, like a business ally, and not just an employer?
So I'll tell you a side story on that. When I was looking to nominate people for awards last year, there's someone that I know has an intellectual disability that is one of the most amazing employees I've ever seen, who works in a restaurant locally. And I asked about this situation because I wanted to nominate the business, because I know of 2 people that work there who are on the spectrum, and they did not want to be recognized because they don't want to have the disclosure. They don't want to bring attention to that fact. They want to be just employees that work there. And so I think while you'd have that what I think we should do is, if we love the ally idea, we should push that as an always campaign, not a March campaign. And then anybody
that.
who, if there's a business that wants to be an ally, they should put a sticker on their window, and I don't care. They're not going to put the sticker up if they don't want to be an ally.
Right.
And there are some businesses in Fishers who they leave their ally signs up way beyond March.
Yes.
South Points has been out.
Yes, I know Owen needs a new.
Old
They need a
National
new
Bank
one.
still has, Old National Bank, they have theirs up in their lobby all the time.
I know in the past, when we very first started the committee as a whole, and most of you in the room may not know this, but we sat down and we actually talked about, when George Martin was here, what does it look like to be an accessible business? So we did have an outline of that, and it was difficult because, like George said, you know, it's a business that has closed captioning. If they've got computers and televisions that are up, you know, that they play the game and we get to see this. So what we came down to that was hard is, what is a checklist that we can put out there as to what an ally type of business is, what kind of things that they offer. So I'm willing to go back to the table on that discussion. We were kind of in over our heads, I think, at that point, because it is a big topic. We even looked at Bloomington, who had a checklist for businesses. I think when Darcy and I talked, we talked about the grading system that we're using with our health department for, you know, if you've got an A+ rating because your food's good and you've passed all of this, that, and the other, what does that look like for an ally? Or do we even say you get the ally sticker regardless of whether you meet these things, and we flip-flop that and we say, if you go through a little bit of our information processes and things that we can offer educationally, then we give it after you complete our little information things. You know, that was another thing. So I know we can take this offline, but I did want to mention that she's got the right idea. We thought of it a long time ago. She's got the right idea.
Oh, for sure. I
So-
think we should definitely do it.
Okay.
I think we should think about the best way to get the bang for the buck.
Yep.
Good
Really
stuff.
coming down. So, yeah, thank you.
So-
I'll sit
so
down
I-
with you. I'll sit down with whoever
That
to
would,
talk about the
that would be
past.
great, because I was thinking from an ally standpoint, not just hiring, but from accessibility from a person with a disability using that business, or how, again, like Stacy was talking about, going in and having TVs with the words for people who closed captions. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking about, like an ally. Do we have a checklist saying, okay, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Again, not from just hiring somebody, but from a customer, because a lot of us are customers, and we go in there and we want to make sure that we go into a place and it's a safe place for us as a customer.
And I think
So-
some people really want to be allies, and by getting a sticker, they're saying they're willing to learn. I think part of
Yeah,
it is
that's
we
Yeah.
give people like
Yes.
a tip sheet, you know,
Yeah.
because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Learning.
So I think with opening their eyes to the the tip sheets, or how well they could serve the disability community, that would be so helpful. So I think that, and I think there's a sense of.
What's that?
I'll try again.
That was not very friendly to people who have ears.
And I think there's a sense of pride that goes with a business, wanting to help other people, wanting to help the disability community, because the disability community, we're a big source of funding for them.
Right.
Sure.
So therefore, why would they not want us? Why wouldn't they not want to be an ally of the disability community?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm kind of going with this.
Cool.
And then the last update I have, if you can hear me amongst the rain, is that I'm excited on October 9th. We're meeting with Marissa and some other folks to talk about having a disability day at the Fishers Farmers Market next year. So those talks are going to be a discussion then as to how that's going to take place, kind of like maybe duplicating what the existing days are like. But it would be great then for folks with disabilities being able to craft their goods or get ready to maybe have things to sell, or just have awareness. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look, but we can talk about that on October 9th. So I am very excited about possibly having a disability day at Fishers Farmers Market next year. Yes. Sorry,
It's a little hard to hear with the rain.
Yeah.
Can't complain about the rain, but next
Fishers
year.
Farmers Market next year.
In October,
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we're going to talk in October about that. So those are my updates. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
March Disability Awareness Month, Stacy.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna hope that everybody's watching or watches this later, because I want to recruit as many people. We have new people. We have Sherry and Brad here tonight as people that came forward and said, we want to get involved. I'm hoping that we have a lot of other people because there's going to be many things that we can talk about and do. I don't want to give too much away other than to say we have a really great possibility, and to mark your calendars for March 22nd, 2024, when the Indy Fuel will play the Cincinnati Cyclones. That's right, Cyclones. And that will be March Disability Awareness Month. And Fishers is really partnering with them because we're bringing the Indy Fuel home to Fishers and a future event center, the Fishers Event Center. And there's so much more to say about it. So I'm going to invite everybody, first of all, to a kickoff meeting on October the 10th. It will be at Hub and Spoke. Those who got the agenda, there is an actual agenda for this meeting attached within that agenda, but we'll get more information out there. There are going to be all of the different discussions surrounding what dates, what events we're going to have, what possibilities are out there. We do have some news about our friends at Conner Prairie are going to be shutting their building in February 2024 and opening up in 2025. We've used that facility for a lot of things throughout the month, so we will have some discussions surrounding that. So overall, I just want to encourage everybody to get involved. This has been, I believe we're 8 years that we've done this. It was our I guess, first claim to fame, and a lot of people look forward to it every year. And you can see the awareness. It was mentioned by the Parks Department, how much things have changed from our first goal being educate, accommodate, and celebrate. Those were the three things we strive to do in the first year. And I look at now, we've got the awareness out there. Now it's time to have fun. So that's what I'm hoping to do. And we've had a lot of people that have been involved through the years. I hope everybody comes back, but I also hope some new blood comes in with new ideas of things that are possibilities for us. And we make 2024 the best year ever. So that's my speech, and go team go, and please ask your friends.
What time's the planning meeting on this?
I'm sorry, right, it is 12 to 1:30, and it will be Hub and Spoke, and I will have that information. It is in this agenda that's attached. Hub and Spoke Parks Conference Room is what it's called, and it's at 8100 East 106th Street here in Fishers. So we chose that building as a little larger room because we may have some of the Indy Fuel joining us. So we hope for that, and I'm excited about sharing possibilities that we have with them and things that we'll join and do. So that's all I
Good
have.
work. Excellent. Okay, the last thing is we'll just retouch again on the announcements. Reverse Job Fair, Grace Church, October 6th. Flyer is also linked to the agenda. Does anybody have any additional questions, old business, any new business, anything else you want to chat about? No? Okay, I will officially knock it down. This meeting is adjourned. Now you can go stand in the lightning.